Here's an interview with Halley Gross, the co-writer of Last of Us Part 2, in an interview she did in September 2019.
That's a really good question because we want to talk about the extension of the first game. So it's not just a new second game, it is a continuation of the story of Ellie and Joel. Sure, well, in certain parts it's very
Okay, so it's actually a story about from the first game, which is natural to be a sequel. Makes sense.
similar, right? At the end of the day, story is about characters, and you want to create characters that you find fascinating and interesting and put them in difficult situations and challenge them as much as you can and test how much they're willing to fight for what they want.
That's fair. Conflict and motive, that's very important.
What's different and wonderful about games is when you're working there, it's a living medium. So Neil and I created an outline, but then that outline evolved and changed as we worked with the designers and the animators and the...
See, that sounds a bit strange. It's as if they designed a story and then said, oh crap, this has to go into a game. Now we have to change our outline. Usually when you have an outline, you don't change the beginning, middle, and ending. You change the scenes that connect those three elements. So either they don't know how to write for video games or for any other genre or medium, and they go, oh, now we have to change stuff because the designer said this or the gameplay developer did that, which is not what you want. You want your story to be fleshed out as much as possible and then the product to be emulated through that. You don't want to go back and say, oh, we got to change the ending now, or we got to change what happens to this character. It's like, well, why would you have to do that? Why not write an actual story first where that's all figured out? And the only time you can't do something is if the developer says, oh, we can't actually have this scene where this person does this. And then you take it out or you slightly tweak it. But you should never have to change the major story beats or the outline of a story when you're making something. That should already be figured out.
artists. So there are major beats in the game that were one way 3 years ago when we made this outline that are totally different now because as the game grew, we realized it didn't quite work anymore. And we
See, that's not a good sign of good storytelling. That's like being influenced by game development as opposed to being influenced by creativity or the creative vision. So, it's like, we're going to have a car section. Oh, we could totally put that in the story now. It's like, wait, why didn't you figure that out before you started making the thing? Couldn't you have asked a developer, hey, can you make cars? Do you want to do that? Because that thing that's we want to show off in this game we're making. So it's these sorts of scenes that the writer should have been asked or should have been asking questions of the development team saying, what do you want to see and do? Can we do that in the game? Say yes or no. If we can, then I'm going to write about it. So a little bit more back and forth should have occurred before they started writing everything, I think.
we're in a position to be able to change them, which you can't really do in film and television. You finish the item before you make it. Unfortunately,
Yeah, that's the problem. You're supposed to finish something before you go to production. You don't just start changing the plan when you're making the thing. And these are major story beats, not like little scenes like, okay, that we can't have, she can't carry a gun because it's not a gameplay scene, it's a cut scene or this or that. These are big story beats. These are plot points. These are chapters. You don't screw around with those.
I cannot except to say that it's so fun and those suits are very hot. And you have these cameras in front of you, so it makes it, I grew up as an actor, I was a child actor, but it makes it hard to act it. I have such respect for the actors that we have because they have to be able to look at you, but in front of them there's this big camera, and when they, in the scene that you saw, if they're touching each other, their Velcro rips, and yet they're able to stay in the moment. We're really lucky. What we really want to focus on is Ellie, and Ellie growing up. And part of that growing up in such a difficult world is challenging how that kind of systemic violence, the violence that hits her every day, these big traumas that she's experiencing.
Okay, so the previous game was apparently about love, and this game is about hate. And using the word systemic and systemic violence, already my my bullshit meter is going, uh-oh, this is not good. What kind of system is in place? What kind of society is in place in a post-apocalyptic zombie apocalypse? That's what she's going through. Isn't it just survival? Isn't it just fighting? Having factions fight against each other and where society has been destroyed? If society has been destroyed, what systems are in place? Is it just tribal fighting? If that's all it is, that's not a system. There's a bunch of tribes. There's steps before and above that a tribe that there would be systems. It's a strange. I'm not sure she's using the term correctly within the context of the setting, but I just every time I hear system or systematic violence, I'm like, oh, okay, we know where they're coming from.
How those are impacting her soul. I don't think you can live in such a hostile world that Ellie lives in and ignore that kind of pain and hate that she's going to have to experience. And so we wanted to be really honest with who Ellie is becoming. So I can really only talk about what you saw there, but what's amazing about this new class is that they have these, acid-infected clouds that you have to negotiate. And even though Ellie is immune, right, she's still hurt by this cloud. So it forces you to play in this new style that you've never played in before. Well,
yes, we've never had to deal with AoE attacks in a third-person game. What do you do?
Will definitely be done by February 21st, because that's when it comes out. The game.
All right, so obviously this was incorrect, and everything that happened in February, the coronavirus, and whatever QA tests and quality control things they did, pushed the game back. Again, totally normal.
I think we're saying is about 50% bigger, but it is massive, not just in length, but in width. Like, all of our levels are bigger.
Not just in length, but in width? I don't... Our levels are wider? Okay.
And wider, we have more cinematics, we have more characters, we have more animations.
Yeah, apparently the file size is something like 80 gigabytes. So if you're looking for a download to your PS4, better start deleting some other games, I guess.
We have larger melee systems. In every way, this game is bigger and better. Sure, so the WLF is a faction that Ellie will have to navigate through in Seattle. They're called the Washington Liberation Front, and they've taken over the Seattle QZ, and they've been there for about 15 years. And they're very anti-outsiders. They only care about each other and themselves, and anything else is a threat that they'll shoot on sight. And so,
which tells us really nothing, as any community in a post-apocalyptic world would be focused on themselves. That would kind of be a given. The world's in chaos. You don't know who to trust. You have a community. That's that. That's all there is. So
they're, at first blush, this incredibly scary, evil group that Ellie has to negotiate as she's trying to, at least in the demo you saw, go after Tommy. But what I think we're doing that's really interesting and exciting is we're trying to...
Oh, she's got Batman vision. Look at that.
Humanize all characters, not just the characters we love, but also the characters that we don't. And so as you saw, like, we have these new AI systems where our characters are calling out for each other by name. When somebody dies, they're mourning them. And that's very much to say that, yes, these are enemies, these are obstacles, but these are also people. And every act of violence that Ellie...
These are enemies, these are obstacles, they're also people. Our NPCs are so good. It's like, okay, your AI is amazing. We get it.
...has to execute has a cost.
I seem to remember a certain controversy with the AI in the first game, and how the trailer or the gameplay example at E3, was there a downgrade in the actual quality of the AI and how smart it was, or how it wasn't very smart? So again, we're getting this big hype about all this great AI. It's like, no, it's not. They're just NPCs.
Not just to her, but also to the people around her. Trying to, in every opportunity, flush out the world as much as possible and make every space you're experiencing new, exciting, and tell a story. So in that section, you're learning about Eugene, who took over this old library, and he was a gamer, and so he has all these games. And yeah, every room you explore, hopefully you'll find something interesting. Yeah,
this is just like, oh, look at the world building, look at all this stuff. There's stuff in our world. There's all these Easter eggs. Like, yeah, that's great. Okay.
That makes you glad that you checked out every nook and cranny. So right now we're really focused on part 2, and we wanted to make sure that was a complete story, that you could play it having never played the first game and feel like you're walking away with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's really where our heads are at right now.
Sounds very similar to what was talked about in the Mass Effect series. Like, oh, this game is standalone, but if you played the first game, great. In reality, most of these games, even the Mass Effect series, they're all episodic. The difference would be with Mass Effect is that they promised that your choices would carry over, and they did. I don't think there's any importing from the first game. If there is, bravo. I don't know how that would impact the story. But even with Mass Effect 2 and 3, it's like, oh, you didn't kill the Rachni, or you did kill the Rachni. Great. That's all the context you really need. You really need. Shepard did some stuff. Something died and something did not die. That's all. Now, if they carried over whether you brought Liara with you and she had an argument with her mom, and then Liara has different dialogue with you in Mass Effect 2, that would be, you would need some context for that. You see? So all these people saying, oh, you need to play the first game to understand the context of the second. No, you don't. She's telling us you don't. You don't have to worry about what happened there. It'll explain things to you, or it'll be a standalone game. A standalone game or a standalone story should have all the necessary narrative to explain the drama and the events of this story. So it's not hard to interpret that. It's not hard to figure that out, especially from a trailer or especially from a 1.5 hour leaked demo or leaked video.
The tattoo is super interesting. So the tattoo was made in part to hide the bite mark, right? So in the demo that you're seeing, we know Ellie's immune from the first game, but you still see her putting on her mask, right? She's lying to Dina about who she is. She's hiding a part of herself, and the tattoo is part of that. Now, what's cool about the tattoo, which creates a little bit of tension with Dina later on in the narrative. Unfortunately, I can't today. I can only talk about what you saw in the trailer, but I can say that the woman you saw is really important, and I'm very excited for people to get.
So they might be referring to Abby. They're calling her Anna here because no one knows exactly who that was in 2017, but that's fine.
To see her eventually. Great question. So Ellie in the first game, she's 14, and there's a lot of stuff that is the same, right? She loves in this big way. She's scrappy. She's capable, but she was still a kid in the first game, and now she's becoming an adult, and she's going out on patrols by herself. She's making her own choices. She's falling in love, and then this tragic event happens. And she becomes fueled by a new kind of anger and hate that she didn't have in the first game.
So I'm assuming she's 19, I guess. There's nothing wrong with playing a 19-year-old lady. It's just, can she arguably attack and survive against men twice her size? That's the believability for most players. I'd say, okay, you still play a girl. I don't think playing a girl is a big deal. It's, are you playing as a capable character? Can they do all the things? Was she taught properly by whomever in the previous game, or the transition between this and the second? Or sorry, the first and the second.
And the second game will really be about exploring how that changes her, how that defines her. But that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, the trauma that Ellie experiences in the second game is not the first trauma she's experienced, right? She's been orphaned, she's lost Riley, she's lost so many people, Henry and Sam, that she's cared about. And she says at the end of the game, everybody I've loved has either died or left me. But that's just the nature of this world. But it has to weigh on you, right? This has to have an impact on your soul. And so much of what we want to talk about is how Ellie continues to survive, why she continues to fight.
Well, the reason is revenge or anger. So that should be pretty clear. And that's going to be a pretty, not droll, it's just going to be a very straightforward story. Very similar to how The Witcher 3 had that one goal to find your daughter, and yet you had this giant world to explore, open world. So that's why it took away from the plot. And this seems a bit more focused. So you have these set pieces, and they all just line up one after the other.
How is she getting out of this quest for justice? And how does that define who she is? And
so quest for justice, that's probably not the right term to use in a post-apocalyptic world where laws are no longer matter. Justice would just be another word for revenge. And unless she's trying to be some sort of sheriff that pops up and says, okay, here are my set of laws. This is what I consider justice. If you break that, I'm going to go on a crusade and hunt you down for whatever reason, which is strange in a post-apocalyptic world where resources are scarce and your main problem is revenge or finding people to bring to justice. It could work. It's just very, very hard to grasp that would be the case. So it has to be a personal thing. It has to be more about morality as opposed to this pop-up justice or pop-up ethics that you'd see from a sheriff character. And I don't think Ellie is someone seeking justice. She's seeking revenge.
much of that is about being the last person standing and what is her responsibility there. So because
Being the last person standing? Okay, wait, there's a difference between the last person standing, seeking justice, and seeking revenge. Those are three different ideas.
it's turned out to be such a big and complex game, we've decided to focus entirely on single player. So there will
Yeah, so there's no multiplayer with the eventual DLC later on in the year. So no multiplayer at launch and potential multiplayer in DLC.
and they're smart and they're really talented. They've got big ideas. Yeah, oh yeah, I play the game constantly. I'm really proud of it. I think there's so many incredibly talented people at Naughty Dog, and every time I play, I discover something new. All of our setups are so big, so complicated. You can do so many different things in each setup. Like, as I'm sure you guys saw in the suburbs, like, you can come at the same setup and play it so many different ways and get new reactions from your enemies, get new reactions from Ellie. I find it a great way to spend a work day. Yeah, I'm really lucky. Well, so the team from Naughty Dog made these beautiful characters in the first game, and that was really exciting for me. That was one of the reasons I wanted to come on board for the second game, is because I fell in love with Ellie, I fell in love with Joel, and so I was really excited to get to help and support Naughty Dog in furthering their stories. I also got really excited in creating these new characters and what original ideas could we bring to the table. Naughty Dog is an incredibly diverse place filled with a lot of different and interesting perspectives, and we wanted to make sure in this game...
Well, not according to reports. It sounds as if people who have creative ideas either get shunned or called phobes of some sort. So I'm glad she's saying it is a creative place. I'm just curious how creative and how many co-writers or how many secondary writers do you have that could voice these opinions and get them in? Because it seems like you don't need too many writers to write a linear story about revenge. It seems pretty straightforward. So is this more of a designer issue where the designers get to say that, have their own ideas? And they're the ones who get called phobes or this or that? How does the writing work exactly? Or how does the creative process work? I'm curious about.
You felt those different perspectives. We weren't just showing you one kind of character or one kind of viewpoint. We wanted to show a vast array, and for me that's really exciting because it forced me to continue to be creative, and I got to work with so many different people in those developments. In terms of like how much is she alone? Yeah. Unfortunately, I cannot talk about that, but a lot of what we are talking about is Ellie learning to stand on her own 2 feet and having to fight for what she believes in, and what it is to be alone and what it is to be supported by others. So I imagine you'll get both. I really hope that you love it and that it excites you and it makes you ask interesting questions and that you find characters where you see yourselves in them. And that you have an incredible time and that you keep playing games and sharing games and want to make games.
Okay, so that was pretty much, whether it's for Malaysia or Russia or parts of Europe, no difference. You know, who's this for? What kind of gamer are you, etc. So yeah, that was the Halley Gross, co-writer of The Last of Us Part 2, sharing some tidbits. I love these videos. They sort of give you a little insight into the creative people behind the process. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're bad. I thought this one was rather decent, but it's always nice to know the mentality and some answers to some questions a year before the game comes out or was ready to come out. So thanks for listening and have yourself a great day.